Hi, everybody. This is Secret Ducky, lead coordinator of Right On Con. I'm here with Heather Fox and Jonathan Stutzman, co-creators of Tiny Picture Books. You could have been knows I love that title. So we're here to talk about co-creating picture books, creating picture books with as a partnership. So could you tell, first of all, how did you guys get connected? A lot of picture book authors don't know their illustrators until after they've been through the publishing process. So the publishers who hooks the two of you up. Was that the case with you, or did you know each other from before, or how did you come to work together?
Well, I guess Heather, as far as when we started creating together, Heather needed to do a school project for college, and they had to take, well, you can talk about that.
Yeah, so we had actually known each other before we got like completely involved in the whole publishing industry. I was in college, and I was in one class that was a children's book illustrating class, and we had to take some kind of pre-existing folktale and then retell it and illustrate it in sort of our own personal style. So I had asked Jonathan if he could rewrite the story for me. And I guess that whole class and me like just getting into children's book illustrating got me involved and got us super interested in the industry. So it was then that we together like sought out getting an agent in the children's book literary world. And from there, yeah, we've just been trying to.
So you guys knew each other before college? Or
we did. Yeah.
And then you collaborated on this project for your college project. That's really cool. So Jonathan, you illustrator yourself as your main training, or you were in college for that?
I went to school for film, screenwriting and directing for film. So I would.
That's different from picture books.
Yeah, I've always loved writing, so I've never stopped writing since I was like a little kid. But in high school, I decided that I loved movies, so I wanted to make movies kind of on a whim, and I just went and got a screenwriting book for Screenwriting for Dummies. I went to Barnes and Noble, and I went down and I just picked that up in high school. And I was like, oh, I want to learn to write movies. So then I just got really into that and decided to go into it for college. And I got my master's for screenwriting and directing as well, and had the itch to write some books. And then Heather was like, "Hey, do you want to do this story with me?" And I was like, "Oh, that'd be awesome." So then once I got the desire to keep writing more picture books, it hasn't stopped. And
I've that's a really cool story. So you guys made your first book together, but at that point you weren't agented or you didn't have any sort of publisher representation. You took that collaborative project and started querying it, or
yeah, so the Elephant's Nose was because it started out as a school project and we got, I guess, so involved in it. We self-published that one just because you're just like, yeah, why not do this? But it was after that, and we learned so much from self-publishing. We're just like, it would be so much easier for ourselves if we had an agent, because we had to do all of like the promos, the marketing, and it was just like so much work. But yeah, so that was when we sought out querying the agents and going through that process together.
Right. Okay, cool. So you were working together. So did you have the story already written out then, Heather? Or can you talk a bit about what the collaborative process is like? You started writing the story and you have the images for your direction, or did you talk about the story together?
Do you know about that?
Sure. Well, for that one, that was already an established story by Rudyard Kipling. So I just adapted that for her class, and I didn't really spend a lot of time on that one. just because it was. We didn't really think it was going anywhere. We
changed the.
It was for a class. It wasn't.
Yeah. So again, that was kind of a for fun thing, and we were just like, oh, this turned out kind of fun, so let's self-publish it. So that was a fun experience. But for the books that we have coming out, we have little creative sessions, and we sit and talk about. Generally, I throw out ideas, and Heather's like, "Oh, that one's really cute," or "That's terrible." Never, don't run with that. She's not that harsh, but yeah. So I'll throw out ideas, and then generally give her an outline of the story, and then she'll start sketching and storyboarding. Sometimes I'll give her really terribly drawn storyboards that I'm envisioning, and she makes them beautiful and awesome. So that's kind of how it's been working now. Heather, I think, is coming up with some of her own ideas too. So whenever we sit down and have coffee and talk about stories, we kind of just brainstorm and figure out what we're doing. So
yeah.
That's fun. So the story itself even is a collaboration.
Yeah.
I guess a lot of picture book illustrator duos writer writes the story, the illustrator just draws the pictures according to direction. There's some room for interpretation.
Yeah.
But you guys work together for all parts of it.
Yeah.
And then you write the text and Jonathan, you illustrate it. Go each separate ways to do the actual creation part of it, and then come back and do review what each other has created along the way, or do you just kind of talk about it, you go on separate ways and back and say, look what I did, it all looks great. How do you go about merging the creative process as you go forward?
Yeah, so I think one of the benefits of like actually collaborating with the author for me is that when he writes, he sort of has like these envisions for how things will look on a page while he's writing it. So he'll sort of give me visual cues that I can work off of, and I sort of, I guess, check in and show him like my illustrations, and he'll be like, oh yeah, that's great. Or like, hey, how about you change this? So he's like, in a sense, kind of like an art director too. when I'm illustrating, and he gives me suggestions, which is good. And then when I'm illustrating and I was like, hey, these words don't really work well on this page with the way that it ended up being illustrated, so can we cut stuff out? So in that way, it's nice because then we sort of edit ourselves before we send it out to the actual editors. So
right.
That's a nice process.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So you guys are, do you have agents now?
We do. Yeah.
Do they get involved in the I know with novels anyway, that the agents are involved in author feedback and doing revisions with your agents before you can go on to publishers. It's the same apply with your agents, and you then take their feedback and discuss it between yourselves.
Yeah, we were really lucky to get an awesome agent, Elena Giandanazzo from Pittman Properties, and she's been so fantastic in the process because she does give us a lot of great feedback, and we value her like opinion in the industry, because we're kind of newbies, and there's only so much that you can read on blogs and hear on interviews to like figure out how to do things. And sometimes I just still feel like we're just going in blindly and hoping for the best. But she's great. Whenever we have questions, she is there to answer them, and she gives great feedback on things that she thinks maybe we should change. Sometimes she leaves it open, like, I think maybe we could do this, but if you're really set on like having this in there, then if you feel good about it, then just kind of keep it.
Yeah.
So she's not like a dictator or anything. She is really. It's probably one of the best things we could have done is to get an agent, and again, we were really lucky enough to have her. She's kind of a superstar. So it's been a great learning process for us, and she's definitely helped a lot with. Because we send her stories first, and she'll give us feedback and be like, "Oh yeah, I think this is ready to go, and I'll get
in the raw state, or before you create the illustrations and stuff, you send her your story concepts, or
Yeah, normally we'll send like the full manuscript with just like a couple like samples of illustrations, like with characters, and just to give her a sense of what it would look like. But I don't do a full like dummy of the book unless she thinks it's really necessary to send out to the publishers. Yeah.
that's pretty neat. Okay, so you've discussed your books and you've started creating it. What do you do if you get a spot where your creative vision differs? Do you have a process for working through? Because everyone's got their own ideas of what they picture the book as being. Do you find for you guys that you're pretty much on the same page all the time, or do you have situations where sometimes you've got totally different ideas about where you were going to go with something?
I'd say generally we're pretty much on the same page with stuff. Yeah. So that makes it good for working together. So it's not like clashing.
I guess if you do a lot of brainstorming together, then you have the opportunity to work through possible differences at that stage rather than after you started creating things too.
Yeah. And I think also we're pretty open to like changes. So even though we have an idea of what we want from it, Heather with the art and me with the story, I think that since we are like, I always just want it to be the best it can be. So if there's changes that Elena gives us, or Heather's like, hey, these words don't quite work, unless it's something, I don't even think it's ever come to this, but unless it's something that I think is necessary, I would probably be like, I think it's necessary, but I don't think that's ever happened yet. So
yeah.
What do you anticipate doing if that does come up? Would you allow that your agent has a lot of industry experience, or would you want to try and really stick to your guns and stay true to your creator vision, or you say you haven't been faced by that yet, but what do you think? I guess it's one of those things that I'd have to see how it happens.
I guess it would depend what it was. Depend on the circumstance. I think generally I'm a very indecisive person anyway, so I would go with the gut of the other person. I'm very self-deprecating in a lot of ways. So I'm sure that's not good in some ways. In other ways, it forces me to try to do or make things that are better. But I don't know. What would
generally,
you say?
like Elena has I know she has more of an idea of what certain publishers are looking for, and like she has an idea of what stuff in children's book is already out there. So if we would send her something that is a little bit similar to something that she knows is out there, she will steer us away. So that, it's helpful to know like what choices to make if we're ever like torn between our own ideas and her ideas. So
that is good. So you're obviously sitting together right now. Do you do all of your communication in person, or do you do a lot of it through email? And how do you keep track of decisions and creative ideas? Mostly do you brainstorming over coffee? Or?
Yeah, generally it's more just face-to-face communication, but sometimes I know I work better when I'm by myself, like drawing. I don't know. And I know you work better when you're by yourself and you can just like.
Well, creation is
what you're doing.
An independent endeavor where you're sitting, you've got your own little world. Like even writers who have write-in, you're all sitting there fixed on your laptop. And that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
So it is very independent pursuit, but obviously brainstorming for creating a story together is a joint project that requires a lot of communication to sure you're getting on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah, generally we'll do like an initial talk about story ideas and where we should go. Sometimes we write out lists of story like ideas I have, and we'll like circle and be like, oh, maybe this is the best idea to continue with. But when I write, I'll write like maybe 3 or 4 stories at a time, and then like I'll be like, which one of you wants to get finished? And then hopefully one of them will say yes, me, and finish itself for me. And then I'll send it to Heather, and she'll be like, oh, this is good, or like, I think it needs a little work here, or she'll get an idea of where to start with the art. So far it's been happening very organically, and sometimes I'll shoot her ideas for titles or ideas for books through text or email. But for the most part, we'll sit and talk about it in person, and thankfully we live close by to each other, so it's not too difficult. Coffee makes everything better. So
yeah.
Brilliant idea, because I have a good cup of coffee in my hand.
That brings up another question then. Where does the ideas mostly come from one of you or the other, or do you find you both contribute equally to the story, like a base story ideas of where either any of her story is going to be about an elephant or that sort of thing? Does that mostly come from one or the other, or do you both come up with stuff regularly?
Well, sometimes I will draw some kind of character, and that will spark his idea. Like he'll create a story around this character that I drew, kind of thing. Or sometimes he'll just come up
with a challenge.
Yeah.
Come up with a story on the fly. Just here's a character.
Or I feel like what's been happening recently is you come up with a title of the book first, and then work from there.
Yeah, I've been trying to something that if I don't have a good title for something, for some reason I'm not enthusiastic to like finish it out. But if I come up with a really good title, then I'll be like, oh, this is great, because I feel like titles half the battle sometimes, because I have so many story ideas. So I generally have a lot of story ideas, but if I come up with a great title for it, then I'm like, okay, this one's ready to start really putting my time into. For some reason, that just works for me.
Yeah.
So, what did you say? Sorry.
Oh, no, so going back to you create, sometimes create characters as a launching off point or scenes. Do you find, is there any sort of story connected to them, or are you just playing around with your tools and something will come together for your pen, or?
I feel like there's a lot of playing around, and that's one of the things I really like about picture books, and just like collaborating with Heather. A lot of times it just feels like a little kids like making up stories again and drawing pictures, and that's like something I did my entire childhood with Star Wars action figures or Micro Machines or Legos. You just pretty much have these characters that are just like sitting there, and you pick them up and then you create stories from them. So that's kind of a lot of the way it still happens. Like now, like Heather will create like a character, and I'll see him and be like, oh, what can I do with this character? Or I'll come up with a story, and then Heather has to create these really fun and hilarious characters from them. So I don't know, it's just a lot about play and having fun, which is something I love. And making movies is really fun too to me, but I feel like there's a lot more pressure for some reason to create something like amazing and like artistic and meaningful. Not that picture books can't be that, because a lot of them are, but for the ones,
a lot of them are just fun for kids. They're just something to entertain kids. And, as long as you're bringing a smile to kids' face from the book, or just enjoying that, then your purpose is cool. Whereas movies, there's a lot more pressure to your main audience for a movie, well, even with kids, but as adults. Whereas with the kids' books, you're kids. You find that you find that easier having like if you're writing for the kids as opposed to specifically for the, even though you're going through a lot of adults through the creation process and the intelligence, you're talking about it, the parents as the end user. But knowing that ultimately kids, that's your final audience, and as long as they like it, knowing neither of you have kids or kids that you interact with regularly? How do you figure out what your ideas are going to be appealing to?
Well, I mean, we do read a lot of picture books, the two of us, and I mean, I generally just enjoy reading them. I think they're hilarious. So we do write them for kids, but also it is like a piece of ourselves that we're, writing them for us too.
Right.
Creating these like super silly and weird stories that just like make us laugh. Because like if they make us laugh, like they're probably gonna make kids laugh too. Because we have pretty silly humor. Yeah.
And that's one of the things I think is awesome. Like I still love animated movies. I think they're some of the best movies because one, they can reach children, but a lot of times they're just hilarious and emotional, and they can be something that adults and children can both enjoy, which is not often that things that they can bridge that gap. And I think good picture books are the same way. And even like any kind of picture book, because a lot of times it's the adult that's reading to the child. I mean, it's an age level where the children aren't reading yet. So it has this wonderful relationship there instilled in it that is adult and child sharing the story together. And I personally, I don't think I've really grown up at all. So my mind is still like silly and goofy and has a lot of childish behaviors, unfortunately. Some of them are good. But so like Heather said, I would read these, just go to Barnes and Noble or the bookstores and just like read picture books, and I would just love them and be like, this is awesome. And like a lot of the artists working today, like Heather, are just like so fantastic. So the art is beautiful, and like there's so many talented people working in the industry that it's just like, why wouldn't adults enjoy it too? So we don't just write the books for kids, we're writing them for ourselves.
Yeah, I do really enjoy when I'm sitting down at bedtime with my kids and reading the picture books, and there'll be something that just would totally go over the kid's head, but I'm like, oh, it's not so it's really funny or whatever, and I get a lot of it. I have my own favorites that don't always match up with what my kids like. But, so we're getting close to the end here. Time-wise, I forgot to set a stopwatch, so hopefully we're not over time. Final couple of questions then. So you have a couple of books out already. What's it like, the release process or following release? What's it like being published together? Obviously, there's somebody else that's involved in your work. It's not just you.
Well, so actually, we have 3 books in the works that actually will be releasing next year. So right now we're still in that process.
Well, but you have the Elephant's Nose.
That one was self-published, so it was a little different just because we could control, like we knew when it was going to come out because we did it ourselves. So with this one, with these new books that are coming out through publishing houses, it's just so different because the timelines are just so different than what we were ever used to. And they're still like in the works. They're still in the process of being made. So we have these end dates and we are just like so excited for them to finally come out.
When you see material, like you get your first page proofs or something like that, do they send you hard copies that you share together, or do you each get your own copy and you open them separately and then you text each other, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. How does that all those stuff separate?
we still haven't gotten them yet because it was just in the last year that we've actually got all these deals. So it was a great 2017. Very excited, but it's so sad that we have to wait. Like generally, the process for our books is like like a year and a half to 2 years before it even comes out. So we're finishing up like the manuscript and art right now, and then when we get like the advanced copies, I think they'll send it to both of us. We'll probably open the box and cry, and then run over to each other's houses and hold each other and cry. And it'll be really fun because it was finally there. It doesn't even seem real right now. But we have Butts Are Everywhere with Putnam and Penguin books coming out in 2019 in the spring or the summer, not quite sure. And then we have Llama Destroys the World with Holt and Macmillan, and that's coming out
in the fall.
In the fall, winter of 2019. And then we have a sequel for that that's untitled right now. And then I have 2 books with another illustrator, Jay Fleck. He did like Tilly and Tank, and I forget. He has a lot of awesome books out. But a Tiny T-Rex series with Chronicle. It's Tiny T-Rex and the Impossible Hug is the first book, and then there's a sequel to that, and that comes out in 2019 as well. So we're gonna have a lot of fun.
Next year is just gonna be crazy.
That must keep you really busy with all the different projects to juggle at different stages of creation, the post-production, or but
and we definitely don't really. We're not sure what next year is going to bring. Like your question was like, how does it feel to get the books and the?
You haven't gotten there yet, but you're doing.
We'll probably be reading your blogs and listening to all your authors talk about all that, so we know how to handle all of that. I'll be scouring Google like these crazy weird searches that like I don't think anyone else Googles, but there's probably a bunch of other authors out there like, what kind of food do we have at a book launch party? And just like random questions like that I need to know the answers of before the book comes out, or how do you make a book trailer and things like that. So there's still a lot for us to learn, and we're still like young and new in this process, but so far it's been really exciting, and we're just excited to have the books in our hands finally.
That'll be a big moment. Okay, final question. What do you think are the benefits of co-creating something versus just doing it on your own, like as an independent author?
Well, I think you can answer this one a little better because he worked with another illustrator, where you sort of just handed off the manuscript and let him do his magic. So you didn't really have any kind of input in that kind of process. I don't know if you wanted to add anything on that.
So with the series with Chronicle, the Tiny T-Rex series, I'm working, like I said, with an illustrator, Jay Fleck, and he has awesome work, but I've never even met him in person. We've only like talked through Facebook or email a few times, because I think he lives in like Minnesota or something like that. So it was off of his character, and they contacted our agent and was like, hey, we need a writer for this character. And she mentioned me, and I pitched an idea, and then it all worked out that I could do it. So in that way is different for me because I was coming up for this a character for someone I didn't even really know, and I didn't know how much say I had in the creative process because it's like his baby. So I just kind of sent the manuscript, and it got okayed. And then the first time I got art back for it, I was like, oh, wow, this is so strange because like generally I'm working with Heather, and I see her like rough sketches of it, and she'll be like, hey, what do you think about this? And there's nothing wrong with like I love working with Jay, but it's like a completely different experience. And I definitely love the personal relationship where I get to like be more on board in the process, and maybe that's just selfish of me. Where I
build off each other, and your stories sort of form together as opposed to as separate pieces.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with the other way too, because that works. I mean, that happens all the time. But personally, it's much more dear to my heart when I'm like get to see Heather's art from the very beginning. It just like makes me feel happy to see it grow until that final like color, like when you add the color and everything, and just like, oh, I saw it when it first was a little sketch. And it's just like really beautiful, and I don't have to wait as long. I'm a very impatient person. That's what I have to say. What about you, Heather?
I mean, it's hard for me because I've only ever worked with Jonathan on books. I haven't worked with another author yet, so I have yet to have that kind of experience where I'm just handed a manuscript and I have to work off of it solely with my own judgment. So, yeah, I don't know how much I can answer that one, but yeah.
I definitely think it helps though to work hand in hand with someone, because the creative process it's hard enough to get one person's image that you have in your head into another person's image or their image to somehow meld and create something. And that's one of the beautiful things about collaborative art is that process and how it shapes one another. So I'm sure there's minuses and pluses to both, but so far it's been awesome for us, and we really love the process together.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's great. On that note, I think we're going to wrap up here. So thank you very much, both of you, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much
for this interview. It's been great talking to you. I've had a lot of fun learning about the creative process. I read lots of picture books, obviously, to my kids, but I don't know much about the creation side, so it's been fun learning about that. So thanks again for joining us. And,
well, thank you so much for asking us to do it.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was so fun.
We love this is our first interview, and hopefully we didn't screw it up too bad.
No, it's great. Hopefully it won't be your last. All right, well, good luck with your books going forward.
Thank you.
And and all the best.
All right.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
See ya.
Goodbye.